Two brothers, sons of a Navy SEAL. Jerome Hill, a former Baltimore PD officer and narcotics detective. Victor Hill, the former sheriff of Clayton County and author of Vigilante Sheriff. Now, they've joined forces to break down the hottest topics in law enforcement and beyond on the Hill of Justice.
Welcome back to the Hill of Justice. I'm your host, Jerome Hill, and I'm here with our co-host, Victor Hill. Today's episode dives into a volatile and actually a heartbreaking confrontation between the disabled veteran and responding officers. After what seemed to be just a routine car crash, it spirals into a 40-minute standoff with 8 officers. So, Keith, we're about to go ahead and show you a clip of a video. I want you to take a look at this.
All right.
To be honest,
What happened?
I came out and turned right. This Porsche. It was a Porsche and a Chevy that kept pushing. I'm like, shit. Plenty of room, right?
Yeah.
No room whatsoever. They literally accelerated. I'm like,
So you try to come out here and make a right or a
man.
left?
No, left.
Left?
Yeah, left.
And a Porsche came out.
I'm going to Wawa
You're going to Wawa.
and then home.
Okay.
That's it. Because the kids wanted meatball sandwiches.
All right.
Like, fuck me, meatball sandwiches.
Fair enough.
So I'm like, I'm going to take the van and get some meatball sandwiches. I'm like, are you kidding me? Now we got a guy, I've been down all day, all this morning, preparing a guy for a national championship fight for MMA for the entire country, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you're not coaching tonight, so go get us some meatball sandwiches. I'm like, got it.
Well, you're coaching a fight or you got a fight coming up?
Both.
Both?
Well, I'm not fighting.
You're not?
I got.
Bad back?
Don't get me started.
Oh, okay. All right. Where's your
Joel. I'm Joel.
I'm Tim. Nice to meet you.
Tim, nice
How
to
you feeling? You have anything to drink or anything like that?
No, I had a beer at like 12 o'clock?
Beer at 12 o'clock?
But
All
then
right.
I had to do 3 workouts.
3 workouts?
Yep, 3 workouts with 3 different fighters. If I sound lightheaded, because I need sugar.
You said you feel what?
Dude, I'm lightheaded. If anything, I need sugar.
You need sugar?
So when I came out, I'm like, okay, guys, you want this? Gotcha. And they're like, hit me up with some Wawa, get us some meatball. They wanted, everybody in the whole house was like, meatball sandwich.
Okay, Keith, just to put some context into Victor, we put into some context. This individual is definitely drunk. There's no doubt about that, but we also have an individual he said a few things and did a few things. What were some of the things that you were able to pick up on what he did?
Well, I can tell you one thing. It looks like he got some skills. The way he was talking, it just put me in mind that he maybe have some MMA skills. May or may not be, but remember some of the things he was saying he was doing. So, you want to pick up on clues like that because depending on what your skill level is as an officer, that can be a very dangerous thing to do with. He does appear to be under the influence of something. And then sometimes there are certain conditions people can have that make them seem like they're under the influence of something when they're not. But either or is a concern for an officer.
Right. So right now, we don't know if he is, other than what he just admitted, that he had a beer at 12 o'clock.
Right.
You're absolutely correct. Once again, he's a veteran. He served 6 tours in Afghanistan and suffers from serious physical and psychological trauma to the point where later on in this video, he tells officers that he has gone through these type of things. On top of that, he expresses some paranoia. He shows aggression throughout the whole clip and has some suicidal ideations associated with it. One of the things that you did pick up on was the fact that he had some skill sets to him. Naturally, when we're taking a look at a car that goes off the road like that, one of the first things we're trying to take a look at is any markers that are on the car to identify what that person believes in or what he might be associated with. I didn't see any type of stickers for that on on that end of it, except what he was very proud and he was very fit. And this guy stood a considerable size compared to the other officers that came onto there. So was there anything else that you were able to pick up on that?
That's pretty much it about right now. I'm interested to see what's getting ready
Right.
to unfold.
Yeah. So, and then the officer, he did a good. What do you felt like though that Tim did in terms of greeting him, and he seemed pretty okay with greeting him, and there was no type of escalation at that point, correct?
No, not at all. I thought he did a good job.
Would you have said something different?
He fist dapped him, but kept a safe distance just in
Mhm.
case. That's very, very important because if this guy has ground skills like jujitsu, you don't want to get too close unless you know what you're doing. And even if you do know what you're doing, there are people at higher skill levels. So it appears that officer's there by himself right now. So he needs to maintain that conversation until backup can get there. Let me say this: professionals never arrest anybody alone. You see it happen. I don't want to Monday morning quarterback officers, but really you should always have another officer with you before you make the arrest, or even let a person know they're under arrest if possible. Sometimes things happen and you have to take immediate action, but it's one thing to fight a person. It's another thing to physically have to restrain them and put their hands behind their back. And that's a task sometimes that it takes more than two to actually handle. Not necessarily if the person is big or strong. Some of the most difficult people to get restrained when they resist arrest is a 90-pound female or a 90-pound anybody, because there's a difference between fighting someone and getting them to physically put their hands behind their back where you can put the handcuffs on them. As we know, handcuffing people in the front is extremely dangerous. A lot of people have lost their lives like that or received serious injury. So it appears, I don't see another officer yet, but what I do like is the fact that he's talking to him and hopefully waiting for his backup to get there.
That's correct. And so he's doing a good job at this point in time. He's talking to him. He's engaging with him. He's not letting on anything that he has suspicions about, which is a good thing. And according to the National Center for PTSD, 11 to 20% of veterans who serve in Iraq or Afghanistan, like he did, experience PTSD. So yet, most of these departments don't know how to really deal with mental health crisis intervention training. And just as you were putting it, and we don't know, other than the fact that he said that he was drinking a beer, anything could say he could be going into having some issues with a diabetic coma, so on and so forth. So there's a lot that's going on with it. I want you to take a look at the second clip because I think that this is where it gets a little bit juicier.
Okay.
Deal. Okay? Like I said, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. No, don't. Right? There is a couple of things that we do have to follow through with today, though. Okay? So, you did say you drank before you drank. Alright? So, nobody's going to jail today. Like you said, you're not going to jail. You don't want to go to jail. You're not going to jail. Okay? Jail is Burlington County, Camden County, throw away the keys.
If you guys want to take me to jail, you're going to have to kill me today.
Right.
So you know. You have to kill me today.
We are not going
I'm
to
not going to jail.
Look at me.
You have to kill me.
Look at me.
God's honest truth. You have to f***ing murder me. You understand?
So, we're not going to jail.
Something we're doing.
Let's stop that talk.
Keith, were you able to hear what he said to the sergeant?
he said
Okay.
to the fact
So
that you're going to have to kill me today if I go to jail, correct?
Right.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
right. At that point in time, what are you thinking?
Well, that's a pre-attack indicator. What people say verbally, their body language and stuff like that, that gives you an indication of what you're dealing with. So he's already telling you that he's not going to go in peacefully. So now that officer has to come up with a strategy. And hopefully what that strategy is he said something on the radio where he needs help to come, and more than two officers probably. But he needs to say it in a way where it doesn't alert this guy, and also say it in a way where they don't come sliding up with lights and sirens. Because when people have PTSD like that, officers pulling up real fast like that can escalate the situation. But they need to come and be enough show of force, but walk up calmly in a way where maybe they can start to talk him down and he can see that he's outnumbered. And sometimes the show of force without force can stop something from proceeding from that moment on.
That's true. And in my experience too, the show of force can also aggravate the situation.
Right.
And it seemed to be what happened with him because 8 officers came and he saw that as a potential threat to
Right.
him. And so there is issues on that end of it too. And remember, this is all, none of this is static in nature. This is all dynamic.
Absolutely.
You're never going to be able to tell what number to put out there of force to go ahead and stop maybe somebody like this. But I agree with you. Throughout the whole time of this whole video, they had badges, they had guns, they had tasers, they had body cam. The only thing that they didn't have was a plan. And if you take a look at this video a little bit further, you'll start to see that he becomes extremely agitated, and to the point where at some point he starts taking a swipe at officers.
Mm-hmm.
They did not control the situation whatsoever. In fact, the person who had the most control was that guy who was spiraling out of control himself. He had the most control. He had basically told them, he had backed them down to the point where officers were, you could tell they were physically intimidated by this
No
individual.
doubt.
And,
No doubt.
And then they, and certainly they were going around him like a star. And I'm glad that this never came into any type of gunfire, because I'm afraid that they could have even shot each other the way that they circled around him. And so, that's a situation where we don't want crossfire to go ahead and hit one another. So that was part of what he had there. But it gets to the larger issue about training. And, what do we do in instances where individuals are not, or officers are not trained to deal with mental health crisis? They're trained about control. They're hell bent on control. But how do we go ahead and start putting in mechanisms for mental health training for professionals like this?
Yeah. Well, the first officer was doing fine. One thing that we got to be real careful about, we just got to talk about the elephant in the room. They're not necessarily afraid of him. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a big guy, but there are 80 units wanting him. So there's no reason why they should be able to handle that as long as he don't have a weapon. They're afraid of the politics that could come around prosecution. There's this thing out there about mental health where, he's mentally ill. You should have been trained. Okay, the truth of the matter is this. There is training, and sometimes you can successfully talk them down, and sometimes you can't. It's not, there's a particular level. Sometimes the magic tongue works, sometimes the magic tongue doesn't work. If he's under arrest, he has to be taken in. And someone has to initiate the arrest at some point. The textbook way to do that, of course, is to tell him that, someone be at a distance and tell him, listen, you're under arrest. We need you to turn around. We need to get down to your knees and see if he follows those orders. And if he and do that while they're a distance away. If he doesn't follow that order, he can't see everybody. There should be somebody behind him with a taser that can go ahead and deploy it and see if that's the safest way to get to him. The one thing about these situations is it's very fluid, and these guys are afraid of Monday morning quarterback, which they get a lot, and they're afraid of the press and the prosecutors and everything else. Because now every officer has to think he could just happen to tase a guy. We had a guy like this not too long ago, very muscular guy, and he died of a heart attack. He was in law enforcement, but he cannot be tased in training, because if he got tased in training, it would cause him to have a problem with what he automatically died from. With our officers, they'll tase a person, they'll have a heart attack, and if you got some crazy prosecutor, they'll prosecute you for murder. Well, how do you know if a person has a bad heart or not? And if you know he has a bad heart and you can't handle him physically, then what? Because if they'll prosecute you for tasing, they'll certainly prosecute you for shooting. So you got a lot of dynamics going on here. It's not just training, but it's the fear. Everything is on camera, and you don't know what political person is going to use this situation against you. But let's go forward.
Well, I will tell you this, that we're talking about. I know people who have been, of course, prosecuted for that type of stuff, but they usually are protected under the Good Samaritan law, right? And then, but that doesn't stop anybody to go ahead and prosecute somebody for whatever reason. I think that when it comes down to, you're right. There's no way that we're going to be able to tell if that individual has a bad heart. So you still got to perform your job, regardless of the body cam, and regardless of the politics that may be involved, or anything, or the public even watching you. To arrest somebody is oftentimes it is not cookie cutter. It is very, very brutal at times. You have an individual who doesn't want to go in and they actively resist. It is going to look bad. There is no part of an arrest that I've ever been a part of, or any I've seen other people be a part of, that somebody resisted, that it looked great. Not one time. Oftentimes, people take a snapshot of those clips and play it over and over and loop it to the point where somebody is like, well, what happened here? He just slammed them for no reason. Well, sometimes in trying to gain control of the situation, you're trying to think of the least amount of time that you need to take to go ahead and put somebody down, to go ahead and effect an arrest. The reason why I'm bringing this up is this incident lasted over 40 minutes. And what that happened was, naturally, what is two things that are going on organically? The alcohol is seeping out of him. He's becoming more coherent, and thus he's getting his faculties together, where they could have went about trying to go ahead and resolve this in a very quick manner. They could have had somebody who was a veteran to come, who's on the force, to talk to him, to say, hey, guess what? We need you to go ahead and do A, B, C, and D. But you're right. Somebody needs to take control. They did not at all. And you saw them really trying to, they had no type of plan. And there was something that you said. Go ahead.
No, you were about to say something.
There was something
good.
that you said. Yeah. There was something that you said that actually we're about to take a look at this next clip. And you're going to see everything that I'm talking about in its totality. If we could take a look at the next clip.
Let's do that.
It's not. This is where you live.
Is it what you want to do with me here?
Live.
Dumbass, I tried all this shit you're doing.
Yo.
I built the program.
Yo.
Get back.
Taser.
Get back. Get back.
It doesn't
Get
hurt,
back.
dumbass.
Get back. Get back.
Nobody gives a
Get
f***
back.
about your taser, you
Get
candy
back.
ass.
Get back.
Hit me again.
Get back.
Hit me.
Get back.
Joel, stop.
It's called pain tolerance.
Joel.
Get back. Joel.
Stop what you're doing.
Get back.
Did I stop?
Joel. Get back.
Reset your brain right now.
Joel. Get back.
You can tase me all day.
Joel, we don't want to tase you.
Get back. Get down on the ground.
So let me say this. Tasers don't work on everybody. They don't. But here's the problem, and I feel so bad for so many law enforcement officers because they're experiencing a lot of what we all know about my case and what I experience, and how you deal with prosecutors that want a Monday morning quarterback and prosecute you when you do your job. But there's an important thing that's been taken away from law enforcement officers, and it's very, very important we hear this. It's a very controversial subject. The best thing to do with a guy that size, and I've dealt with that a lot, and you have, somebody has to approach him from the rear. And the best way to approach him from the rear is, I'm about to say something nobody wants to hear, is a chokehold. Okay, you and I are not large guys, and you know where my training was. And back before they made chokeholds illegal, I was taught, hey, listen, no matter how big a person is, no matter whatever, they have to be able, you got to be able to distract them. And that's the only way you can really control a guy that size. Now, you're supposed to be trained to do it. You're not supposed to keep it on him until he passes out and die. There's a certain way that you put it on the person. But here's what I want people to hear before they get upset. Everybody, kids, teenagers, and guys like him are training in chokeholds and jiu-jitsu and MMA. So they all know the chokeholds. They can use it on us, but if we use it on them, now we even have states like Georgia where they prosecute you for using chokeholds. So law enforcement is forbidden from using something that could save their life. Now, don't get me wrong. You're not supposed to put a chokehold on somebody like when we saw that infamous incident in New York where they kept the chokehold on and the person ended up dying. It's something that you can only apply for a certain amount of seconds. But we know it's effective. We've seen pythons choke out crocodiles. We saw one of the jiu-jitsu brothers fight a pit bull and get behind it and put a chokehold on it in order to control him. When the Gracies used to train cops, they used to take their smallest brother. This happened in L.A. and say, hey, he can arrest anybody in this room. So they had a guy just like him in there. He can arrest him. Let me see it. You know what he did? He put him in a chokehold. The guy passed out for a split second. He put the handcuffs on him. But because people who don't deal with violence, they sit in robes, they sit in offices with prosecutors, they're not out there dealing with this. They come up with these ridiculous restrictions, and they're not out there having to deal with the situation. And the only way I can think to solve this, the one thing I love about Police Citizens Academy is most of it may be just fluff, but when you actually have citizens, okay, listen, I know you say we should do this and do this. Here's a pair of handcuffs, arrest me, show me how it's to be done. And they realize there's not too many options the officer has. And the few options they have have become controversial due to these political prosecutions. We got a situation here in Atlanta right now where officers tased a person in a jail, in a Fulton County jail. I think he died a day or two later because of having a heart. They were cleared of it. A new DA comes, and what does she do? Prosecute them for murder. And those charges are still outstanding now. So you got officers afraid to use a taser, and they're definitely afraid to come in and use a chokehold, which could have probably brought an end to this peacefully, and they could have gained control of it.
Well, they could have. But the only pushback I have on that is that it depends on where you're at. Where I was at, if you're in a situation where you have to use a chokehold, then you use it. But it has to be proportional, and you can't go ahead and use it to the point where you're taking the guy's life away unless the situation warranted. I don't want people to also get into the idea to think that there are things that we cannot do. I want people to be very, very clear that there's a lot that we can do if we're in a situation where we have no other choice, whether it be using the highest form of our weaponry, our weapon, our gun, or even a brick, because it's been involved in things like that too.
Brother,
so
I got to stop you on that.
It depends on what's
Brother,
that?
I got to stop you on that. You got to understand this.
What's that?
There's a difference between what they teach us we can do and what they actually do to officers when they do it. Okay, we can use a brick in self-defense, but I think, in this political climate, if you're in the wrong jurisdiction, if you're here in Fulton County or Clayton County, those prosecutors would probably prosecute you for murder, and you'd have to prove that that was your only way to do that. What they train us to do and the games that these prosecutors play in court are different. So officers are scared, they're hesitant. You can see the fear in them. There's more than enough of them. If one of them can take control of him from the rear, take him to the ground, the rest of them should be able to apply enough force to get him handcuffed. But they're too afraid to go in and use that initial amount of force that needs to be used. Why? If I do this, this could happen. If I do this, that can happen. It's like sending a gunfighter into a fight and making him hesitant to use his gun, and he's gonna lose.
Well, I agree with that, but I'm here, have no illusions. Each and every one of those officers were scared as shit about what was going to happen to them by that guy. They were completely courageousless on that end of it. They had, and first of all, they had all this, as I was mentioning before, they have all this gear. They had no type of plan. How do you not have a plan to deal with something like that? Even some of the things that you were talking about strategically and tactically to go ahead and do. You deal with large individuals all the time. You deal with skilled individuals all the time. At least where I'm at, I don't know about them. Yeah, there was a supervisor on the scene. He's the one initially that had the stripes on and was telling him, "Hey, we're not trying to arrest you, but and we're not taking you to jail tonight. But Joel says to him, I'm not going to jail. You're going to have to kill me. And so, what I will tell you this. What if I blew your mind and told you that this guy was actually a teddy bear? But he was just portraying this aggression to them.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
That wouldn't surprise me.
That's in fact what actually happened.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What were you saying?
Well, again, there's two fears we're dealing with. I just want to make that clear. Are officers afraid of some of the guys that come across? I'm sure they are. I'm sure most of them was afraid of this guy, especially if they don't have any skills or whatever like that. But they're dealing with a double fear factor. They're not just dealing with the fear of him. They're also dealing with the fear of, if I do this, what can happen? Let's take the school shooting that happened and the officers hesitated to go in when this guy was shooting kids. Were they afraid of getting shot? Maybe so. I don't think most were. I think most of them was afraid of what would happen when they go in there. What if I miss? What if I shoot a child? What if he misses and he hits a child? What happens? It's almost like you damn if you do, damn if you don't. Then you got a group of people who they can tell you how to police. They can tell you what to do, but they can't do it. Good example, my infamous case that we're fighting up to the Supreme Court now. Everybody on the other side, he's too rough. He handles the jail too this way. But since we haven't done that, 5 people have been murdered and a murderer escaped yesterday. So if you know how to do it better, then you should go do it better. All of the people who tell you what you shouldn't do, they can't run a jail or they can't deal with that dude right there. But they're the ones making decisions whether or not to prosecute you. And that's where you see this fear. Well, I think they have more of a fear of that than they have of him. I think if they weren't worried about being Monday morning quarterbacked and fired and prosecuted, I think they would have been more aggressive and took command and control of that situation.
Yeah, I just think that they didn't and wouldn't. And, the truth is that you don't control a situation by, standing around waiting for him to lose it. That's one. 2 is that one of the officers, just to give you some context, one of the officers had dealt with him before at his home and knew that he had this type of condition. Mm-hmm. And that person didn't take control of it. And then here's the other pushback on this too. There's 2 officers from I believe Coral Springs Police Department and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting tragedy that happened a few years back. Those officers did not have jurisdiction at that area. You know what? While the one officer was cowering behind a wall, these 2 officers went in to go ahead and neutralize the threat. I think it's up to the officers. I think that, there might be something with what you're saying on that end of it, of people worried about losing their homes, their cars, and so on and so forth. But this is a profession that you have to go ahead to be courageous. And and that's even in the you can have fear. It's okay to have fear, but you still have a job to do. And it turned out to be that this guy actually at the end cooperated.
Excellent.
He was able to come down to the point, and of course he got charged with DUI, resisting arrest, and I believe it was also some other charge that he was charged with. But I could tell you this, that all these things being said and done, we have to take a look at how to train officers better when it comes to those type of situations. I think you would agree that the training with these officers and with eight of them being around, that this could have been resolved quicker. That's 1. 2, that every minute that continues on escalates this situation for an unfavorable outcome.
And I remember, and they don't know if he had a weapon or not. Nobody even had a chance to pat him down. They were too afraid to get close to him.
Well, that's the other problem too, But I think that this video and us talking about it, for wherever people live at, they need to contact their local police department or city council and seek and find a simple question and ask them a simple question. Do your officers receive, any type of response training for PTSD and for combat veterans? And if not, get it, demand it, and if there's a veteran in your life, check in, talk, listen to him, and if they're struggling, connect them to help. The veteran crisis line is at 988, and I think you have to hit 1 after that, or you can text 988. So those are some of the tools that you can do when you're dealing with individuals much like this. So I wanted you to go ahead and take a look at and critique a little bit about these videos.
Sure.
But that's all we have for today. And I appreciate it because I think you brought up some really good points on that. And so for that, I wanted to tell everyone to go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, particularly on this, because I think there's a lot of things that everybody else can really gain and glean from this. And I'm sure that they have a lot to say about that. So I just wanted to say thank you. I wanted to tell everybody thank you for participating, joining, and subscribing, and certainly watching the show. And just to let you know that The Hill of Justice is produced by Juming Delma Studios, and we'll see you in the next take.